Welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, hosted by Bruce Hutchin, in episode number 154.
Welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, where it is all about whitetail deer hunting tips, techniques, and the stories so you can become a more successful whitetail deer hunter. And now your host, Bruce Hutchin.
We're heading to Cornell, British Columbia today, and joining up with Mike Hawkridge, is the owner as well as guide and outfitter of Big Country Outdoors. He's a lifelong hunter, professional hunter and outdoorsman with 20 years of guiding experience. Also, he was on Canadian TV on the show Man Tracker. Whether he's in the hills chasing sheep or in the swamps pursuing mature bull moose, Mike is the guide most clients wish for, and I can attest personally to that fact. Karen is a friendly voice on the other end of the phone. They own and operate a cattle ranch, also called Baker Creek Cattle Ranch. They also have an entire herd of horses they use for outfitting. Although they are typically on the dead run getting things done, drop them a quick email and they'll get back to you as quickly as they can. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, Bruce Hutchin, and we're heading up to Cornell, British Columbia to visit with an old friend, Mike and Karen Hawkridge. And I had the pleasure of hunting with Mike too many years ago, and he now runs Baker Creek Cattle Company as well as Big Country Outfitters. And Mike's been a TV personality on Man Tracker and also had Peterson's with Greg Boddington on a very successful hunt a few years back. So, Mike Hawkridge, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. And thanks a lot for having me.
Say, Mike, I'd like to, right at the beginning of the show, tell all listeners throughout North America how to get in touch with you, because sometimes we usually put it at the end, but I found that sometimes people don't listen to the end. So I want to give you, the contact information right out of the gate. So how do they get in touch with you? Phone, Skype, or Facebook, Twitter? Let them know how to get in touch with you.
All right. Well, I think ultimately the very best would be to, the quickest and easiest would be to jump on our website, which is bigcountryoutfitters.ca. And from there, they can get a hold of all my information. And for the very quickest, I would actually say, or actually the easiest, and you can kind of account for this. I'm really busy. I'm typically running in and out. Of course, as you had mentioned in the beginning here, we've also got a cattle company, and we're growing that currently. So literally, the sun's up, I'm running. So emails are a great way. I check my emails every single morning. I'm up probably between 3:30 and 4 o'clock in the morning, and that's the time that I do a lot of my corresponding. So from there, setting up a phone call or a Skype, such as we're doing right now, we can do that. But definitely for that very first initial contact, a quick email, if it works, is great. A lot of our phones out here, of course, don't work out on the ranch. As far as, being able to pack a cell phone with you, it doesn't work anyway. So definitely the email, which is currently right now, mike@tatlowmtn.com. And, you can get a hold of me there.
All right. Thanks for that, Mike. And listeners, I did spend 5 or 10 days with Mike and Karen a few years ago, and we've got some great stories. But Mike has recently told me some stories about some big whitetails that he's seeing around the ranch and in the area. Now, Mike, why don't you share with our listeners what type of hunting concessions that you do have and what they can expect when they head up north and enjoy a hunt with you.
All right. Well, currently right now we actually have two territories. We've got one territory right down here where we ranch, which is about Cornell is just about center, kind of south central in British Columbia, and it's a small town of about 20,000 people. And out west of that, where we currently ranch, we've got one of our territories. We have another one that's probably about 3 hours northwest of here, and both areas. In fact, the one northwest of here probably carries a stronger whitetail population than what we've got currently down here at the ranch. That said, probably 5 years ago, if you've seen a doe running across the road or a little 2-point buck or something that looked like he was lost, which we all assumed that he must have just been lost, those were really about the only whitetail that you've seen. And now here at the ranch, over the past, say, 2 to 3 years, we have seen some cranker bucks. Like, for our area, if you're looking at something in that 170 class and up, that's a pretty decent buck around here anyway. So I've got some trail cam pictures that I set out just to get an idea of what was here, and I was blown away. As your audience is well aware, whitetails, they're a little bit different than mule deer. They can really kind of sneak and skulk around. So setting up cameras is the best way to catch them. And I was excited. I'd go and check my trail cam pictures, and I was just, I expected these things to be in northern Saskatchewan, not in my backyard. So we were really happy about that. And this past Christmas morning, which for me was a bit of a gift, just, Mother Nature's gift, I guess. I was walking by the window and I looked up the ridge out in front of the house, probably about 250 yards, something like that. And we had a small little, I guess he was a little 3x3 feeding, and he made his way up the ridge and kind of towards the tree line, and then followed by a spike. And I thought, well, that was pretty neat. And then I thought I'd seen something, coming up from behind. And there was a pretty respectable buck that came up from behind, a nice typical basket rack came up from behind. And I thought, man, I'm just going to stand here for a few more minutes. And then sure enough, the granddaddy of them all started walking up. This was a big old buck, swayed back. It would be hard for me to judge him perfectly, except for the fact that he was very wide, and he was massive. He wasn't real tall in his G's. They weren't as tall as some of them I've seen here, but he was maybe he was kind of going the direction, but he was a big old man of a buck. So it was pretty exciting for me to see Christmas morning. But every year, we're seeing more and more whitetail here. The winters are getting easier. Literally this past, it's been the past 3 weeks, I think. We've had warmer than freezing temperatures during the day. So the snow's starting to go, and we've just seen that do real well for our deer population. And without getting too long-winded here, I will just say that up in our northern territory, it's kind of an ag belt up there, and we've got some incredible whitetail hunting up there. The population's just due to the fact that the ground is really well set up for agriculture. So the whitetails, as far as it goes to the hunts that we offer, most of the hunts we will do up out of there. And although I didn't harvest this deer through the outfit, I did I ran into Rick Barrett, and he's a local author here, and he's written 2 books on trophy deer of British Columbia. And I just asked him, I said, off the top of your head, what was the last big buck that that came out of that area? And he showed me a picture of a 230 whitetail. It wasn't the prettiest looking thing, and it definitely wasn't a typical rack, but it was, he scored 230. So that was pretty impressive, and we've seen some really solid, 150s, 160s, and better. But we've seen quite a few solid whitetail come out of that area as well.
So, Mike, in your Big Country Outfitter, what do you focus on? What game animals do you focus on most of the time? And how has whitetail hunting changed that, or has it not changed that?
I guess up here what we focus on right now, or at least what seems to gain the most attention from hunters coming from the U.S., which is primarily where most of our clients come from. The moose and the elk seem to be a pretty big deal. Bear kind of follows up, especially with our European hunters. But I would say that our number one right now is the moose and the elk, with moose topping that even. And as far as it goes to the whitetails, We definitely get some clients coming. We've got some guys coming from Texas this year, and what I think they really enjoy with our particular area is that we have a really strong population of both whitetail and mule deer. So they can come up and have both tags in their pocket, and we hunt both of them in the rut. That's when I like to focus on hunting the deer up there, and so there's a chance at one or the other or even both. But I would say that with big country outfitters, if I had to pick a poster child and stick it on there and not remove it currently, I think it would have to be the moose. But my goal is to be able to offer as many species that British Columbia offers as I can. So my goal is to kind of stretch out and continue to hunt things like goats and stuff like we did.
Mike, let's go back to the beginning of Mike Hawkridge and his hunting tradition. How do you get involved in the hunting business, but more so because I've hunted with you, you're a heck of a hunter. How did all that begin?
Well, I think really ultimately it began with my childhood. I think as most would. The only thing that was kind of different with my childhood compared to most is for some reason, and to this day I don't really completely understand it, but my parents picked a spot actually not far from our area in the north. Actually, the small town that we kind of base it out of Fort St. James, British Columbia. I actually grew up outside of there, and I'm right just off of one of the local Indian reservations. And of course, so hunting for us was, it was a way of life. It was what you did when you put food on your table. So basically, sustenance hunting is what I grew up with. I do remember my mom wasn't big into horns. She didn't like antlers or horns. She didn't like that. She didn't like the look. So it was never welcome around our place. So I remember being out with my dad, and at the time, I didn't have a tape measure on me as a kid, but I do remember there was a big bull that my dad ended up getting, and this thing, he would have been a trophy in anybody's. I'm talking between 50, 55 inches. The one I remember counting as a kid, the points on one side was 13, and I think it was 14, 15 on the other, excluding the brows. So it was just this incredible bull. But when we left, that's where his head stayed as well. It's just, it wasn't anything my parents were into. And so then as I went through school and we actually did what I call move to town. We moved to a small town for my high school years, and there, actually, just outside of Cornell, is where I met my wife, or wife to be. And so anyway, we were fresh out of school, and the both of us got accepted to different colleges. And we put in for the same ones. Unfortunately, we got accepted to different ones, which is how life will go at times. And so, we had a very real talk, although we were quite young, and we said, well, heck, we can go and do this, and who knows where life's going to bring us. Or I had this guide territory kind of working for them. I'd had it in the back of my head, and the thought of just racing out and jumping back on horses and getting into the mountains, it was something that was really kind of pulling at me. And she said, you know what, I want to be a part of that. And so I'm not certain that her parents were real excited about it, but we basically struck off right then. And that's really when I didn't know much about the guiding industry, to tell you the truth. It was horses and mountains that drove me there. And from there, I met an outfitter and that we worked for. And he actually came from a very rich guiding and outfitting background. He was a grandson of Dal Dalzell, a very well-known outfitter up in northwestern BC. And so his name was Rush Dalzell. And he really introduced me to kind of the guiding and outfitting world in British Columbia, and told me about just the stories and the history behind it, and I absolutely fell in love with it, and I realized that ultimately this is where I was going to hang my hat, is on this crazy industry that's now part of my life.
Share with our listeners about the wild horses, and I don't know if you're still breaking the wild horses, but share with them. Just take a couple of minutes, because I find that fascinating when I was up there and what you had done at a point in time.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny you mention that, because it's pretty interesting. We're starting a new wild horse project with the local First Nations out there in the Maya Valley. Yeah, I of course, like anybody else, I had a fascination, with these horses, and just how incredible they are. I mean, you can have your quarter horses, which are, great, especially in the rodeo arena. You can have, all types of different horses are pretty much suited for different jobs. What I liked about these wild horses is that they were just so incredibly strong. If they're not strong, they just don't make the cut. They make a wolf turd. That's all they make. So I've done some work with them, and they're very sensible horses. Once you kind of work through the fear, because of course they're going to have a natural fear of people. But once you kind of work through that fear, they've got a certain logic about them. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to them that just makes simple sense that may not with some of our other more domesticated horses. And they'll go anywhere. They'll, it seems like I remember riding one in particular that when we got to a good water source, many of the other horses would just pass over it. But he understood that this could be the last one for a while. So typically he would stop and at least drink something. And I remember noting that, because I thought, out in the wild, I mean, these guys could, maybe a cougar could put around them, wolves could put around on them, or they could just head into an area that just wasn't great water. So, when he had the opportunity, he didn't take it for granted. And so now, fast forward to now, and I'm actually about to start a pilot project with the First Nations out in the Maya Valley. They've got a huge population as far as British Columbia is concerned of wild horses, and so we're about to move forward on a project that sees us rounding up some of these horses, which in itself is a crazy adventure, because these horses are, for all intents, they're completely, they're wild animals, fast wild animals. So it takes a bit of mapping out and planning and to kind of get around them and herd them. And of course, you're herding them at a bit of a distance, and a lot of times there's speed and rough country involved. So you need to be a pretty good rider and also be able to kind of know enough about horses that you can move them from a distance. And so then we move them into a big catch pen and gather up on them and of course start kind of weeding through them, and mares and stallions and those types of horses would be cut out and re-released, and only the younger horses, and I would say anything from 2 to 5. What we'll do from there is try and get them slowed down, make some contact, make certain that first contact is really positive for them, and work through some of that fear. Because as soon as you can break through some of that fear and there begins to be a little bit of a trust between you, these horses will be incredible. So this is, it's a brand new project. We're really excited to bring it public. These horses will be made available to the public, and they're going to be, it's going to be a neat thing. I hope that people keep up with what we're doing and watch what we're doing, and hopefully they get as excited as I am.
Yeah, from this man's point of view, and I've been blessed to hunt all over North America, Mike is one of the extraordinary horsemen that I've ever seen, and it was just fun riding with him. We were hunting, but we rode some trails and stuff, and it was just it was a wonderful adventure. Just that part of it, Mike. What does it take, in your eyes, to be a great client?
Okay, so to be a great client. First of all, I think one of the things that should happen, that every client should do, is as they're traveling, of course, just as we all know, just traveling aboard. So if you're flying up and there's flights and there's the stress of, making it to your destination with all of your luggage and your rifles, and so even though you're leaving your day-to-day stresses at home, you're kind of adding some more stresses. So what can happen is, as you get to the outfit, it's been such sometimes it's a great experience, sometimes it's a challenging experience. And so what I would say to begin with, to start with, is maybe have a little bit of a process where you take a step back and go, this has been a challenge, and I've been busy, and I've had to take the time, and there's so many other things. And what I'd like to see is for guys and gals to just kind of take a deep breath and go, wow, I'm here, I'm excited, and in all the stresses that I typically shoulder, I'm just going to shrug off, and let's just truly experience the next 5 days, 8 days, 10 days, whatever it might be. So I would say is come up with some way to pinch yourself and remind yourself that this is going to be a lot of fun, and this is going to be a great time. And as long as you can recognize that and take it for what it is, I think you're going to get way more enjoyment out of it. And I guess the other thing would be, prepare yourself that guiding and outfitting is kind of a living, breathing type thing. At least in my opinion, it should be. And if we have a set of plans in place, what I like to do is I like to run over those plans with the clients, before we head out. But that said, there should be a certain degree of flexibility. And so if clients can shrug off, the stress of their everyday life and get there just kind of feeling renewed and excited about what's about to happen, but then on top of that, remain somewhat flexible. And granted, this is hopefully if you book with a reputable outfitter and they're making all the right moves. If you had a plan to go to, the far northeastern corner of the territory, but as it turned out, things just weren't happening there. It just wasn't a happening area. And the guide and the outfitter say, okay, look, we're going to pack everything up because we want this hunt to be a success. So you're going to have to bear with us. We're going to have a day of travel here, but we're telling you when you get here, it's going to be, everything and more. So to be able to have the ability to shrug off the stress of your everyday life and then just remaining flexible and just really, truly being in the moment and enjoying, each day for what it's bringing. Just enjoy the entire experience. I guess that would be, two things that I would hope that from a client's point of view, that they could do.
What does it take to be a good hunter in your eyes?
I guess patience is a big deal. Understanding, obviously, knowledge and skill and all of that comes into play. Definitely remaining patient. I think that if you watch the animals, they're not really on any time schedule. Not for the most part. They kind of eat and breathe and live, and I think that. Sometimes when it comes to us as hunters, I think we can be so goal driven and oriented. Literally, you're passing by opportunity, to race to this destination that you're pretty sure is going to be the right one. So I think that if you could slow down just a little bit, I think you would be more in tune and more in rhythm with kind of nature and everything that's happening around you. And I think your success would go up as a hunter. So I think that being patient is a big deal. And even being patient with yourself, understanding that your first few years are probably going to be a bit of a learning curve and you're probably not going to make all the right decisions. But if you just stick to it and you remain patient and learn, I think that as a hunter, your success will just naturally start to increase. So I think that as a hunter, what's helped me the most is just being able to take a breather, remain patient, and then I guess persistence would be the next thing. Just keep going at it. Just keep approaching it.
How are the wolves doing up in British Columbia these days?
Oh, thank you for asking. The wolves are doing really, really well. It's great that you asked that. We've got no shortage of wolves. I actually just went to a wildlife meeting just last night. I ended up in one, and it was more just to kind of sit and listen. And anyway, I mean, obviously, wolves were part of the topic of discussion. Yeah, there's no shortage of them. They're finding out more and more about them. I mean, as hunters and guides, stuff that we kind of took for granted that the entire world knew, we will now see headlines where they say something like, wow, it was just discovered that wolves use the road systems that we put through for industries. So whether that's logging or mining or natural gas or whatever, those same road systems make it easier for the wolves to kill stuff. And, we always knew that. And so when this comes out as a headline, you go, wow, for the general kind of public out there, even for British Columbian people, they really don't know much about the wolf, and they're still learning so much. And a lot of this is just stuff that we take for granted because we see it firsthand. So the wolves are doing better than they should. There should be some better predator management within British Columbia, or some type of incentive for the guys that are good at what they're doing. That's not to say that we want all wolves dead. I mean, I really, love the wolf. I love having him out there, and I think it really signifies, remote wilderness. And I think they're an important factor, and they're important to the ecosystem. But at the same time, we're just blind if we think that they're going to limit themselves. The only thing that's going to limit them is once they eat themselves completely, out of house and home, and they start to starve off. Well, at that point, the prey species by then are already so far down, it's going to be hard for them to come back, and it's going to take years for them to come back. And as the top of the food chain, and as people, we should understand that there's no need for that. We don't need to wait till that happens. We just need to be a little bit more proactive and come up with a plan that would still see healthy wolf populations, but also healthy prey species. So, for the people that really get upset and get very passionate about any type of wolf control, the bottom line is I haven't seen too many wolves grazing in a garden. It's not what they do. Otherwise, we could just plant huge organic gardens and let them eat carrots and broccoli and kale and live full lives. But that's just not the case. I mean, they eat meat, and they eat a lot of it. If they can jam pack their guts full of 30 pounds, they're going to go lay down till that digests, and then they're going to get up and they're going to be looking for the next 30 pounds. So, I think that just proper management is something that hasn't been in place. I know that you guys south of the line there are finding challenges with what's happening with the introduced wolves. And once your local politicians or groups or whatever realize that, hey, we might have a problem here, by then herds are so decimated that it's going to take years to come back, and trying to gain a foothold on these wolves then, and just trying to slow them down a little bit, it becomes very, very difficult.
And listeners, Mike knows how to call wolves with his mouth. So if you didn't do anything but watch Mike Hawkridge call in a pack of wolves, that in itself is worth the price of admission, in my humble opinion.
Well, thank you. And it's funny. I had a very stark reminder of our hunt that we shared. I just had it this last fall. The terrain was different, but other than that, a lot of it was quite similar. I had a fellow out with his wife, and he was actually a doctor, and there was about 6 or 7 wolves that were putting the run on a cow moose that we intercepted. And, they were out there a ways. And for anybody that's ever shot at a wolf, it's difficult, whether that's the excitement that starts to build in your body, just the realization that you're actually seeing this, you're actually seeing a wolf in your crosshairs, can make it really difficult to connect. And so I think he shot the first go around, it must have been 5 times, maybe 5, 6 times. And there was just tails going every which direction. I mean, these things just took off. So I said, it's okay. Let's go. And let's head in the direction that they headed, and let's listen to them. And we followed them for probably, I would guess, half a mile. And there was we were up on a bit of a piece of high ground. It dropped off in front of us. There was some log piles, and the trees were out probably as far away as 300 yards, and we could hear them just in the tree line. So they were talking back to me. I kept talking to them as I was approaching that high ground, and so I held them there, and they kept talking back to me. And finally, one broke from the trees, and he didn't break straight out. He kind of came around some slash piles that were out there, but he was kind of barking at us, and he was definitely allowing us to know that, hey, I'm the big dog here. I'm kind of leader of this here group, and whoever you are, we're not interested in having you here. So he was, in my opinion, he was kind of giving me, all the warning signs that I should pick a different place to be. And what he didn't understand is that I was picking a fight with a 300 Magnum, and he wasn't. So when he stepped around the wood pile and showed himself, I quickly pointed him out, and he could see us. Unfortunately, he was able to kind of pick us up, and we weren't moving much, but because we were on high ground, he could kind of ridgeline us and see that we were there. So just as the good doctor shot, the shot was good, but wolves are one of the toughest animals to anchor. I mean, I've seen plenty of three-legged wolves, make it into the trees. I mean, these things are tough. So the wolf turned, and then, of course, he got behind kind of the wood piles, and he was following his escape route towards the trees. So we put our move on him. We located blood. I said, it's good blood. It's solid blood. We're going to find him. We made our way into the trees, and he could definitely tell that we were following. I could tell that just by the way he was moving, and the route that he was taking. And as he kind of circled back around behind us, I caught him in behind a tree, and anyway, so I had us act as though we didn't see him, but then I had him shoot, and of course that anchored him. Well, at the shot, we made our way to the wolf, which was only about 15 yards away, and at the shot, the wolves lit up from probably, it sounded like they were probably out there about 150 yards, something like that, within the trees. And it was quite thick, heavily wooded area. And as we approached the wolf, and the husband-wife duo were just completely drawn back with the size of this wolf. It was just a big male wolf, and they were just like, wow. Those other wolves that were with them, the remainder of the pack, had moved their way close to us, like at probably no more than 50 yards. So in kind of a semicircle fashion, they started to howl. And of course, that just lit everything up. And it's great to enjoy that for a split second. There was definitely a very strong look of concern and concern, and maybe even a little bit of fear of, what's going on here? Why are these things coming back? And so I, as we were standing there looking at the wolf, I asked the doctor, I said, well, how many rounds do you have left? And he said 2. I said, not good enough. Help me get this thing on my back. And as we were doing that, I was actually talking to the wolves, not trying to speak wolf to them. I was definitely speaking, two-legger English to them. Get out of here. We don't want you. Get lost. And I was making all kinds of noise and yelling at them, but they remained talking to us, and they literally followed us out of the trees. And they didn't break the tree line behind us, but they howled all the way behind us and right to the tree line. And it was a wolf equal to the one that you were able to harvest. And it was just a very eerie, similar situation where it appears as though in both cases we were able to anchor the kind of the alpha, and that really set things off with the pack.
Wow. So listeners, it's wild out there. That's all I can say. And as Mike was telling that story, I was reliving our story of a few years back. So Mike, we're at the end of the show. In fact, we're beyond the normal stop time, but I want everybody to hear that story. It's incredible. So Mike Hawkridge of Big Country Outfitters, and a good friend for many years. Thank you so much for being part of Whitetail Rendezvous.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day, Mike.
You too. Bye-bye.
As your host at Whitetail Rendezvous, I want to thank each and every one of you for spending your time with us today. I look forward to sharing with you in the next episode more whitetail hunting tips, techniques, and stories. Until then, keep the sun at your back, the wind in your face, and always be patient.
If you have any tips, comments, or suggestions, or what we can do to improve, because we're here to serve you, let us know. Thanks for listening to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast at www.whitetailrendezvous.com.